Hey there, and welcome to that Independent Streak podcast. I'm Wendy Campbell. Have you ever woken up from a dream and then scrambled to Google the details to try and figure out what it meant? What does this color mean? What does this symbolize? Or have you ever had a lucid dream that you really wanted to recreate? Better yet, have you considered the implication of your dreams on, say, your life, your relationships, maybe your interpersonal skills? Personally, I love dream analysis. It's one of those things that I've been deeply fascinated with probably my entire life. Now, there's so much about the human experience that we don't understand. And I really personally feel that our dreams are the key to unlocking that. I mean, there's so much we don't know about our brains and so much we don't understand about the world that we live in and really our experience and our purpose in life as it is. So I think dreams are kind of the key to figuring that all out. So it's one of those topics that I really, really love talking with and talking about and learning more about. So my guest today is Megan Mary. She's a dream analyst, intuitive writer, and artist. She's a member of the International Association for the Study of Dreams, host of the Women's Dream Enlightenment podcast, and as founder of Women's Dream Analysis, we dive in, talk about dreams, their meanings, how you can take more control of the dreams that you have. Very interesting conversation. I want you to check it out. If you should feel so obliged, it would definitely help the podcast if you subscribed, liked it, or even shared it with anyone who also might be interested in learning a little bit more about their dreams. Welcome. So I am so excited to sit down and speak with you this evening. I have so many questions. And in fact, I have so many thoughts on this entirely, but I really do enjoy starting with stories and hearing your story and learning a little bit about you. And I've spent a little time watching some of your interviews, but I wanna kind of learn about how you got started on this path and what brought you here this evening.
Yes. Okay. Well, I grew up always feeling like there was something else and not being really sure what that was, but I knew that I was connected to it and there was more than I was being told. And part of the reason that I became obsessed with Halloween as a child was because it was the one time of year that everybody kind of agreed that there were spirits among us. And it was okay to step into that and to acknowledge that the veil was thin that day and to really have there be mystery as part of life. And I really just wanted Halloween to be every day. And it wasn't because of the candy, maybe it was because of the costumes, but it was more just that feeling that I always got around that time of year. And so, you know, I carried that through my life as an adult. I did continue to celebrate it and honor it every year, but I went about and got a career and did what you're supposed to do, and then really just kind of further and further and further separated myself from that connection, that I would say. And it wasn't until I really got so far away that I started to get really sick. And I was diagnosed with a whole combination of chronic illnesses all at the same time. And it was really too much to bear. It was a tremendously difficult time. And during that time, I was fortunate enough to have a functional medicine practitioner who was helping me, and they suggested that I meditate 3 times a day as part of my healing. And when I started doing that, and it's not that I hadn't meditated before, but it wasn't really part of my daily practice. And when I really started doing that, it was, I'll call it a spiritual awakening, but it really was more of a spiritual remembering, where all of a sudden I got back that connection and all this information started to flood through, and I completely changed my life direction and realized that this was really what I was called to do. And I was in the middle of writing a fiction novel, and that really got kind of second shrift when this happened, because it was like, no, you're going to do this now. You're going to start doing this. You're going to create a podcast. You're going to have all these women who are going to come in. And it was just amazing what happened. And it wasn't planned. It wasn't at all what I thought was going to happen, but I answered the call and I followed what I was felt led to do. And it's brought me to this beautiful place where I'm now helping women all over the world. And it just really shocks me every time I think about it. I'm so grateful for all the connections that I've made and all the difference that I've been able to make in women's lives. And it's been a beautiful journey, and I just can't wait to see where it's going next.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me there's a few questions that are coming out of that story that I'm very excited about. So one, what kind of meditation did you find yourself doing when you started doing meditation to kind of figure out where your issues were coming from?
Mm-hmm. It was all different kinds, I would say. Visualizations, sound frequencies, just basic, the kind where you're not listening to anything. But then I also used an app that I listened to a lot of other people's meditations and visualizations and affirmations and guided meditations on all different types of topics. And that really, just every time I would go on there and someone else would appear and I would follow that rabbit hole and it would lead to something else. And it just was this wonderful way for the universe to communicate with me.
And what would you say worked? Which one worked best for you?
Hmm. I think ones that have to do with energy clearing and energy alignment, because when we can clear the negative energy that we have that we're holding on to, that's when we allow new and more positive energy to replace that. And when we allow that, then we become in more alignment with what our purpose, with our higher self, with our subconscious, with what we're supposed to be here to do.
I think you keep using supposed to, and I think supposed to me, and it's something that I've just loosely been kind of noticing around the world. Supposed to kind of evolves in my mind to intuition. So what we're driven to do, what we inherently know we're supposed to do, and the kind of energy that we get when we do those things is different than, say, the energy of, I'm going to go do that job that they told me to do, or I'm going to go read that book that they told me to, or walk that path that they told me to.
Mhm.
When we start doing the things that we feel like we're supposed to, there seems to be an energy shift where we get a lot more, I guess, yeah, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but universal like feedback. You get a charge from it and it takes you down a different path.
Yes, I feel like there's two different supposed to's, right? There's the supposed to of you're supposed to get a job, you're supposed to be responsible, you're supposed to be licensed and credentialed and stamped and accredited and qualified and all this stuff. You're supposed to do all of this kind of stuff. But then there's that other little mini voice that is kind of like a whisper in the beginning that is, well, but I'd really like to do this, but that there's no place for that in this 3D world, in this
Mm-hmm.
way that we're viewing our reality. I don't know where that fits in, and it's not practical, and it might be even a little bit off to the side, and it might not be accepted, and it might be criticized, and all these. And so it's what you really want to do, and it's not what you feel, what you've been told you're supposed to do, but it's what you're called to do.
Yes. Yes. I think it's interesting too, because everybody kind of gets that charge at a different time, right? Like some people get it in their youth, some people hear it in their youth and then ignore it for a few years and then come back to it in their older years. Some people just run with it the whole time, and God bless them. But I think that there's, at least in my experience, there's this notion of really understanding, like when you start tuning in, you get a different understanding than you would if you, I guess, adhere to all the noise that's in the universe. There's a lot of noise around all the time. There's a lot of people telling you what to think, but there's that moment where you start hearing and differentiating that I think is different. When did you find that kind of sound difference? When did you start feeling different about what you were doing and how you were approaching the world?
I think for me, it was always at the beginning. It was always when I was younger. I felt that way from the beginning. And then just at different points in my life, different things happened that it nudged at me again. And I just kind of, acknowledged it briefly, but didn't really take action like I have now. And so it never really went anywhere, I think. And so when I really started to pay attention to my dreams, that's when I really started getting all of these messages and all this information and all this guidance and all these images and things that were really larger than life. They were sort of parables on their own, and really kind of led me down a path that I felt like, okay, now that I know what this is saying, I have to follow this. I don't have a choice, and I have to do it fast.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've heard other people say, there's like this real sense of urgency once you're tuned in. You just can't go fast enough.
Right, right. So dreams are an interesting space. And I'm curious how you made the decision to really start helping others to analyze theirs. I think it's funny to me because I always I always find myself asking people, okay, well, do you remember your dreams? And 9 times out of 10, mostly from the male side of things, it's no, I don't remember. I don't recall. I don't know anything about it. Women sometimes, and men too, will be like, yeah, I remember my dreams. They don't remember, they're no big deal. It's whatever it is. Every now and then you'll get someone who really does remember their dreams and they dream vividly. And sometimes there are people who seem to have very message driven dreams where maybe they're not vivid per se, but the messaging is in there and they're picking up on the messaging. So the dream analysis is an interesting position, I think, to take and an interesting place to be because there's so many directions to go with it. But can you tell me a little bit more about how you kind of stepped into that space and evolved into dream analysis?
Mm-hmm. I've always been interested in mine. When I was younger, I had recurring nightmares. I also had recurring flying dreams that were just super fantasy and awesome. And so I really wanted to figure out what was going on, what they meant, and how to get them back or how to get rid of them or what have you. And so I used to write them down, and I used to look it up in books what those different things meant. And I would take that and kind of go, oh, that's interesting, but not really sure if it completely resonated with me. And it wasn't until I really started to keep track more regularly of mine and really started to do that deep dive into introspection and personal growth that I really thought, wait a minute, there's this treasure trove here of not only just great creative content being a writer, but of all this other stuff that's going on, and where's it coming from and what does it mean? And I want to use it and I want to figure it out. I want to harness it. And so that was really the impetus. And then I really felt driven to help others. I really wanted to do something that was going to be transformational for other women. I wanted to hear other women's stories. And that was part of the reason that I started my own podcast, was really as a platform to elevate other women's stories that have gone through whatever they have gone through, struggles or medical things or loss or whatever they may have encountered in their life, and whatever pivotal moment they had that then led them to discover that they had a calling and that they had a gift or an ability or something else that they really were compelled to offer to others, and that they then shot off into a different trajectory in their life and really created a whole other world for themselves doing that. And it's amazing, the stories that I've heard and that I continue to hear. I love it. And it really has created a community that is so supportive and makes me feel like, okay, yeah, I thought it was crazy. And I thought, that this was not really something that is socially accepted, and that there's a lot of fear and concern about coming out as this and doing this publicly. But the more people came around and gathered around me and said, no, I had that experience too, and I'm doing this, and I love what you're doing, and it's making a difference for me, that just, put me on the rocket ship. And
Right.
and that's what brought me here.
I think it's interesting too. So where do you draw from when you're analyzing dreams?
I really utilize a method that I've devised after a series, a lot of research, a lot of reflection, a lot of just studying all different things, from religion to psychology to spirituality to philosophy to esoteric mysticism and astrology and astronomy and everything. And I put it all together into my own little soup that is the things that resonate with me, and created this method, which I call the dream mirror method. And it's what I use to draw out from the dreamer what their true meaning is. I don't want to put it on them. I don't want to say, well, an owl is this or a snake is this, and that's what it means, and that's what it means for everybody. I really want to act as if I'm a mirror and hold up a mirror to you by asking you the right questions, the things that you're not saying, the things that you can see in your head, but you're not putting down on paper, the things that you're assuming, oh, well, it was this, and well, it was that. Unless I ask you, you might not offer that or put that down. And it's really getting all those tiny little details that make a huge difference. And it can be a mundane dream. It doesn't have to, or seemingly mundane dream. It doesn't have to be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be a recurring dream, but it still can hold a lot of hidden meaning for you. And so I put the dreamer at the center and just walk them through my method to pull out that hidden meaning for themselves.
Do you think that and I've kind of had this belief for a long time, especially when it comes to dreams, and I think it comes a little bit, I'm Sicilian, so there's a little bit of old wives' tales, right? And there's a little bit of, growing up in a Catholic school where throughout the Bible, there's messages delivered through your dreams. Throughout, everybody gets messages through their dreams, right? And then there's kind of a little bit of that culture of I don't even know if it's mysticism, but that culture of trying to understand the universe, right? So you combine all of these things, and I start questioning, and it kind of takes it to the next level, which is you have all of these elements, and so in understanding all of these things, are there next level evolutions that maybe we're not giving it adherence to? So you have a dream, say you have a dream about your grandmother who's passed, right? In that dream, it's a very vivid dream. You're having very clear communications. You wake up very clear on what your next steps are. You know that you had a different type of dream. Is it possible, at least in your mind, do you think that maybe we don't understand our space so clearly to define awake and asleep, and the different levels maybe, or the different values that we give to our consciousness, if that makes sense?
100%. Yes. I get asked all the time about visitations from dead relatives. I've had them myself. And I believe that it's entirely possible. I put a the reason I call myself a mystic is because I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not taking a strictly Jungian, Freudian view of it. I really am incorporating a level of spirituality and energetic existence and opening up the possibilities to what maybe we don't know. Sure, there's been tons of sleep studies done, and there's been tons of books written, and there's scientists who have data on what they can attain in this world, but we never know for sure who's right and what is really happening. And so I really think there's so when you look at philosophy and when you look at theories about our existence, you really start to destabilize what our conception of reality is. It could just be an illusion. So, when we feel so stern about the fact that, well, this is what's real, and then there's what's not, and unless you can prove it, it's not real. That really closes down the possibilities for what's possible. And I really like to think outside the box when it comes to that. I really like to kind of blow that up and see what comes through. I think it's entirely possible. And the thing that what I came from as well is similar to your background. What I didn't like about that was that a lot of religions act like you can't get there from here. You have to have a conduit person that is sanctioned, that is the go-between. You aren't the one who can directly communicate with the source or the universe or that type of thing. And so that never set well with me when I was younger. And I thought, but I am, and I can, and I don't know why it's not okay. And so that really led me on a seeking journey. Even as a really young child, I was just very curious and always wanting to read more and see what else was out there and consider other theories and consider other ways of looking at what might be considered normal.
Normal's a strange word. Normal means nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to push back just a little bit, because reading the same scriptures and whatnot during my childhood, there's a lot of very normal people who have dreams and have visitations and have experiences. I think, to your point, they're maybe not as believed as, say, someone who's sanctioned by the church, but there are very normal people throughout the entirety of the history that have these visitations and these experiences. I mean, even the Blessed Mother has a visitation. Nobody believes her, but she has a visitation and has an experience, and follows that path and follows that spirituality, I think. And I think that does open the door. I think that does give credence to, we do have that innate ability within us to connect with a higher source, whether that higher source is a communal source where we're all part of this energy, or it's a higher source that's downloading to us. I don't know the answer, but I think that there's a lot of different ways to look at it. It's such a socially touchy subject, right? Where you start sharing it and women are like, oh yes, let me tell you my experience. But the truth is that it is one of those where you dance around it a little bit. But I think that there is that ability within everyone. It's whether or not you choose or choose not to listen to it.
I completely agree. Yes.
So my question, I guess, actually, it's not even really a question. It's just a thought process of the evolution of the dreams that you've had. You mentioned that you've had, the flying dreams, which are addicting. I've had a couple of those, and quite frankly, once you have one, you do everything you can to try and make that happen again. But I'm curious, how do you ever consider coaching dreams? Have you ever considered, like, okay, well, now that you know that you can do this and you can have that vivid experience, this is how you take it to the next step?
I do. I actually do. So I offer dream journeys, and they're basically a series of sessions. And one of the ones that I have is called the Treasure Box. And it deals with lucid dreaming and dream manifestation or dream incubation, whichever one you choose, whichever flavor you want, or if you want to try both. And it's really for people that have already been keeping a dream journal, are already doing the work to tune in to their higher self. They're doing a lot of self-development work and they want to take it to the next level. And I do coach them on techniques for lucid dreaming as well as for manifestation. And so, as a creative person, as a writer, that's something I really encourage all creative people to consider, because when you look at all the things that have been invented and have derived from dreams, Albert Einstein created the theory of relativity from a dream. The sewing machine was invented in a dream. The movie Inception was from a dream. The movie Twilight was from a dream. The list goes on and on. And so it's a wonderful source of inspiration and creativity. And it's just sitting there for us. And so being able to tap into that as a creative person for ideas, even if you're not a creative person, being able to tap into that in your career, being able to ask it questions, not say it, but ask yourself questions that you then incubate on, and it then manifests by tapping into your subconscious. 5% of our brain is conscious and 95% is subconscious. So much of it is hidden from us. It's like the tip of the iceberg, and we miss it all when we're not paying attention to our dreams. And we also miss what's informing our behavior and our patterns and our emotions, and the way that we perceive our place in our world and in our life is all informed by our subconscious. So much of that personal growth work is bringing the shadow and the light, bringing the two sides together for a more holistic alignment.
So I have two questions from that. You mentioned 3 types of dreams. Can you go through those and break those down for me a little bit, and kind of define them for those people who don't know? And then you also mentioned how you take people through that process, and I'm curious what that process looks like.
Yes. So the journeys that I have, one of them is for recurring dreams, and I call it the time loop. One is for nightmares, and I call it the eclipse. One is for life transitions, and I call it the crossroads. And then I have the treasure box. Now, when you said 3 kinds of dreams, take me back to that part.
So we were talking about lucid dreaming, and we were talking about just the different types of dreams that are just kind of differently defined.
Mm-hmm. So, well, you have your lucid and your vivid, and then I classify them by the recurring and by the nightmares and by the ones that might be visitations, or the ones that kind of bring messages from our higher self, and then the ones that we think are kind of mundane. So it also happens, it's a difference of when it happens during the night. So a lot of our dreams happen in REM sleep, but you can also have some in other parts of the nighttime. And as the night progresses, they become more vivid and more complex. So in the beginning of the night, we can have sort of what we would call the mundane dreams that seem like they're just regurgitations of the day, but they're not, because you did a lot of stuff during the day and you're not remembering all of it. So what pieces is it representing to you in a different situation? It's kind of taking those things and putting it into a little story for a reason. And then as the night goes on, we get the more longer dreams, the more vivid dreams, and so on. And when I walk someone through my method, it's basically 4 steps to get to the meaning. And the first step is memory. So that's keeping a dream journal. So that's learning how to recall your dreams if you don't, which is like any muscle. You have to flex it, you have to work it, you have to work at it. If you don't automatically remember them, it's kind of like building up that part of your brain. So when a lot of people say, well, I don't remember my dreams, or I don't dream, and you are dreaming. Everybody does. You probably have 5 or 6 a night, but you're just not used to remembering them, or you've kind of shut off your attention to that part. And so one of the best ways to start recalling them is to keep a journal. And when you wake up, to write down whatever you can remember. The more you start to do that, the more you'll remember. Also, just sometimes trying to lie still when you wake up and think back to what just happened. So it's kind of like when you walk into a room and you say, "What did I come in here for?" And you forgot. And then you kind of think backwards and you go, "Oh, wait a minute. Let's go through the steps and see if I can remember what I was doing, why I came in here." That's kind of how you do it when you wake up, and then you think, who was I just talking to, or what was I just doing? And you just try and sit there and concentrate for a minute to get that little hit, that little teeny memory. Once you get that, then you kind of remember things backwards more and more. So if you have a piece of paper, you might write that first thing you remember on the bottom. And then you say, "Oh, yeah. And before that, this. And then before that, this. And before that, this." And then by the time you have it all written down, it's chronological, but you're not going to remember it chronologically.
Right.
So that's the first step, is to remember it. The second step is called mood. And that's basically just paying attention to your emotions. So in the journal, you want to record the mood that you have before you go to bed, if possible. So events of your day, whether you were in a good mood or a bad mood, or, what have you. Then the most important part is the mood of the dream. So how did you feel in the dream? Which could change depending on the course of the dream, because they're not linear, and they can morph and things can happen and they go into different scenes. And then when you woke up, what was your mood? Because that can also be different from the feeling in the dream. So we record all that. The third step is mirror. And that's where I come in. And that's where I say, okay, give me your dream record and let's dissect it. Let's look at all the different parts of it. And then I want to ask you a whole bunch of questions about those things so that I can draw out your personal associations with them, your perspective, your judgments, your emotions, what that means to you. And so in that step, we look at people that are in your dream, the places, the settings, the landscapes, whether you're inside or outside, if it's a place you haven't been before or a place you know. And if it's a place you know, how is it different from that actual place in real life? As well as what are the situations that are happening and what are the actions? And so I skipped the part about in memory. In the memory step, I ask you to give your dream a title. And so if it was a mini movie or it was a short story or whatever, what's a couple words that you would give it as a title? That usually summarizes a lot of the meaning right there. But then we just delve down and we go into all the mini details. And the details also can be colors, numbers, it can be anything that you can remember. So the more you can remember, the more you put down. And the last step is metaphor. And that's where we look at all the things that you've recorded and all the associations that you've made with those things, and then look at how it's a metaphor for your waking life. So how is this story, which seemingly has nothing to do with you, or seems like it's some weird, strange fantasy thing, or this conglomeration of your day that doesn't seem to make any sense, how is that actually a metaphor for something you are experiencing in your life? And so those 4 things bring us to the meaning.
And through that process, that's a very detailed process. So I think I'm going to have to take notes and then come back to it and practice it a few times. But
yes,
through that process, how long do you feel like typically it takes for someone to, I don't want to say get control of their dreams, but get to a point where they have a little bit more agency through their process?
So in this process, it's not necessarily the aim of lucidity. It's more the aim of insight
Mm-hmm.
in this initial process, and just to gain that connection with the higher self, the deeper meanings, to draw out from the subconscious what is playing out while you're sleeping. Then if you want to take the next step and actually start influencing them, then we start to work on techniques to attain lucidity. And for some people, it can happen rather quickly. For some people, it takes a very long time. And one of the biggest things is you have to have that personality of being open to that possibility. And you have to have the dedication and sort of the motivation to want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And once you achieve it, you'll probably be super excited and you'll wake up. And so then there are more techniques to try to extend that lucidity and to try to learn how to use it to create different scenarios, because you're most likely, even if you have advanced lucidity abilities, aren't going to necessarily be able to predict where you come in. So you just realize that you are in whatever scenario you're in, and then you can change that scenario. And that's where it becomes a really powerful healing tool, because if you have a recurring nightmare, for example, and you're able to achieve lucidity, you can actually use that state to change the scenario and to have it be where you are more in control, where you change the outcome to be a more beneficial outcome to you. And so there's a lot of applications for that, obviously, but that's one of them. Other ones are obviously just to create things, and when you are able to attain that state, it really reflexively has a synergistic effect on your life, on your confidence, on your clarity, on your feeling that you're capable. Because when you can achieve that there, then you feel that you can achieve other things in your life. And then when you change your perspective in your life, then that reflexively involves you changing your perspective in your dreams.
Which takes us to remind me of the name of the movie.
Inception.
Yes. So Inception is a fascinating movie because I mean, I think, a lot of us are like, wow, that's a lot of like control in your dreams, right? That's a lot of involvement that takes it to, the dream within the dream within the dream.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people are really striving to get that deep within their dreamscape, but I am curious about it because I do think that there are enough dreams that I've even had where I know I'm in the dream, I'm controlling the dream. How do I control other people in the dream, and how far can I take this? So I can see where it can get really addicting. Let me just leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to me though, because it does take a lot of headspace. It does take a lot of energy too. And I don't know that there's a way to prepare for that. And there's definitely, at least in my experience, I haven't found a way to really control that, to your point, to where I go to sleep knowing that I'm going to have that type of dream and I'm going to be able to manipulate it in such a way that I can walk through. I've tried so many times, but I'm curious if if there's methods, even meditations prior to going to sleep, that can help that.
Yes, most definitely. And I've actually gotten into the space of creating my own meditation tracks. I haven't created one for that yet, but I do want to create a lot around dream techniques and visualizations, because that is really one of the main ways that you can induce a lucid dream, is to literally go to bed repeating, I will lucid dream tonight, basically saying over and over that you will, or counting like 1 lucid dreaming, 2 lucid dreaming, 3 lucid dreaming, and just count until you fall asleep, and then continue that as that count continues when you're asleep. So intention and affirmation and visualization and all of those techniques play a huge role in this. And so the more that you are practicing those techniques in your waking life, whether you're meditating or whatever you might be doing, the more you're flexing that muscle that's going to help you in that space.
Do you have a favorite lucid dream?
I have one where I don't even remember where I was, but I said, I want to fly now. I want to go here. And it was just this kind of like the landscape behind me. And I was just flying over it, and it was just beautiful, like the most amazing, beautiful scene I've ever seen. And where I was before was not that. It was something, I don't remember what it was, but it was something like, I don't want to be here. And I said, I want to do this now. And that immediately happened. And so I'll never forget that one, because it was really powerful. And I just thought, oh man, I can't believe I did that. I want to do that again.
Interesting. Yeah, I had a similar experience. It took me a while though. There were a lot of lucid dreams prior to that where I practiced and couldn't, and like felt the weight of everything just holding me down. And then once I figured out how to do it, it was like like leveling up a little bit. Like, okay, now I can do it. Now I'm going to do it as much as I can, and that
Right.
attempt to keep control of it, which apparently control is an issue because I keep bringing it up.
Right. And so there's techniques for that. And I've had those dreams too, where you're in a space, or, I was inside a house or something, and I thought, oh my God, I'm dreaming. Okay, where is this? And I'm walking around and I'm looking at all the framed pictures on the walls, and I'm walking down the hallway and I'm trying to figure out, I wanted to see like a newspaper because I wanted to figure out what the date was. And I was trying so hard to figure out where I was,
Mhm.
and then I woke up. And so, yeah, there's certain techniques they talk about, trying to control your enthusiasm when you realize that you are, because that can wake you up. Also, they say rubbing your hands together. There's different techniques that will ground you in that space so that you're able to stay in it longer.
I'm going to try some of these next time.
Mm-hmm.
That takes me to deja vu. What
Mm-hmm.
is your thought on deja vu? And really, all of this comes back, at least in my perspective, to we don't understand time or space. And so these are all things that
Mm-hmm.
we're just playing with, if you will. But
Mm-hmm.
what is your thought and your experience with deja vu?
Yes, and you're not the first person to ask me that, actually, recently too. So I love it. I feel like it's a really good sign. Whenever it happens, I get really excited, or for other people, because I think, oh, really? Okay, good. Like that means that,
We're all normal.
we're on the right track. Like, that this is supposed to be happening now. And I also agree with you so much, because I mean, I'm a huge believer or fan in time travel and parallel universes and all that kind of stuff. That's really the world I like to live in. That's why I'm writing a fiction novel. And so I love to toy with that idea, with quantum theory, and with all the possibilities of time and space being bent or being not what we think, and that we can be transported in time, even in waking life. We don't realize that we are, when we travel across time zones, or when we listen to a song that takes us back to a certain moment, or when we smell something and we have all the sensation of what that smell reminds us of. All those things are really transporting into other dimensions that we just don't consider it that way.
Or we don't talk about it that way. But yes,
Right.
yes. Do you, and I'm not even sure what my question is here, because I'm trying to get to a consensus of deja vus.
Mm.
typically, at least in my experience when I've had them, I'll have the dream, sometimes years prior. In the dream, I go through the whole experience. I'm like, oh, this is a deja vu. And then I watch the next five things happen. And then 5, 10 years later, the same thing happens. And then I watch the next five things happen as they're supposed to happen in the dream. My thought though is a lot of people are like, oh, that's just a glitch in the matrix, that's just your brain, you think you're remembering something that you aren't remembering, which is not an inquisition on them, but my thought is, okay, so if things play out the way that we remember them, in whether it's another time or it's a glitch in a time, how, I don't even know, how do you manifest more of that, when it's something that you're is so intangible, it's so ethereal, it's so in that next space.
Well, I was thinking two things while you were asking that. One thing is, were you talking about deja vu in a dream
Yeah.
or
Well,
in
I
waking?
assume
Okay.
it's in a dream because when I've done it, and I don't have a lot of people to bounce this off of, so this is why I'm feeding
Hmm.
off of you so deeply. But when I've had them in dreams, it's been in dreams. Like I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, there was a deja vu, and then years later, everything will transpire as in the deja vu. So it's not necessarily like, oh, I dreamt it last night and it happens today. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes it's less time, but it's definitely not immediate. There's no instant gratification out of it. So sometimes
Hmm.
you want to tap into that because there's a sense of knowing and a sense of, I guess it's almost like a community. Like you sense this like awareness of everything around, and you're tapped into the source of everything around, right? So it's very intoxicating, but it's also that urge, you want to control it. It's almost like you want to be mercurial about it and see how you can manifest it again.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
does that make sense? I mean, I may
Yeah, I
be
think so. And it's
blabbering a little
sounding
bit.
it's sounding a little bit like premonition, possibly. And I think that even if you don't want to classify it as that, there through visualizations you can re-enter dream states and you can try to also manifest dream states. So it's possible that you can use the state of meditation, which essentially is meditation puts us in a different brain wave. And when we sleep, we're in a different brain wave as well. And so that's why it's so beneficial. And that's also why it helps us connect in so well, is because it brings us down from the brain wave that we're on right now into or up into a different one.
Mm-hmm.
And that one makes is much more conducive to other things happening and other ways of existing and being able to access other things. And so it really is a nice doorway to that world and could be used for that purpose. So sometimes when we deal with traumatic dreams or nightmares, and some people are actually afraid to go to sleep because they don't want that dream to come back, it's beneficial to use a waking visualization of re-entering that dream and reimagining a different outcome to change that in your waking state so that it can hopefully process in the subconscious when you're sleeping. So much like that, you could use that meditation state to visualize yourself in a place where you're receiving that information and open yourself up to receiving that information, because that's really when we start to connect in, is when we ask,
Mm-hmm.
when we say, okay, I'm ready, show me.
Interesting. Interesting. Do you think that smell is involved in setting the stage for that at all? Like aromatherapies and things like that, like
Uh,
different scents.
yes, definitely. I think that can play a part, and that can be beneficial if you like to do that, as well as music and sounds can be very good at transporting us and without a lot of effort. So different sound frequencies have different effects on our brain state and on our body. And I find that really interesting as another vehicle.
I think it's interesting on two levels. One, in the personal sense, but you think about artists and you think about creatives over time and the muse and the sense of intuition and knowledge and how they all tie together to create and to be creative, and how a lot of that happens in the dream state. So I think, it's interesting to kind of analyze it and look at it and see, really intuit what people are feeling out of their dreams based on what they think they saw and what they remember and what they actually take from that space into their waking life. How do
Yes.
you coach to that?
Well, that's where my being intuitive really makes the difference. So I'm trying to coach you to access that part of yourself. I don't, again, want to impose any meaning on the dreamer, but I have a sense as well. And so I use those senses to feel what I need to ask, because it's all in the right questions and it's all in how I lead you through that memory and what you offer as a result of that journey that really brings you to that enlightenment, that awakening.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you do kind of career coaching, if you will, through dreams and through that intuition. So, what does your typical client look like, and how do they take the information that they give you and you give back to them to incorporate it into their daily existence?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all over the board.
I'm
Women
sure.
from all different walks of life, all over the world. All different points in their life. So it really depends on what they bring to the table, and what they want to achieve with that. But what I've seen is a lot of healing, a lot of clarity, a lot of connecting, realizing that they don't have to go outside of themselves for so much guidance that they have inside themselves, and really empowering them to do that and learn that they have that. Because I don't have enough hours in the day to counsel and help all the women that are in the world. So I really want this method to be something that is spread and that is used and that is shared and that is really empowers you to be able to do it yourself, because you're going to dream every night and you want to be able to really harness that power yourself. So that's really what I aim to do. But there's so many applications, there's so many different ways that it can be useful, whether it's figuring out just something, how you want to rearrange your room, or where you're going to move, or what your next move should be in your career or your relationship, or if you're working on a creative project, or you want to overcome something. There's so many different applications that it's a beautiful process, whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And I just welcome everybody to, awaken to that possibility and bring it and see what we can do together.
Awesome. Awesome. I noticed that I have a lot of very entrepreneurial friends. And I noticed that a lot of them are very intuitive. They don't necessarily call it intuitive. I worry sometimes that intuitive is a dirty word in today's society, but
Mm-hmm.
it really is intuition, where you sense, you follow the path. And I think one of the reasons I started this channel was to really bring more women together, to really talk about that intuition and that development of intuition and that trust of intuition, because we have spent so many years At least I can't speak for everyone else. Hearing how intuition is, that's hokey, that's metaphysical, and metaphysical is probably not real. And it just, the older I get, and I laugh when people say it's old wives tales, because the older I get, the more those old wives tales make sense and seem perhaps like they were the path the whole time. And so the more I listen to that, the more I think, and even some of my friends, even some of my male friends, I mean, I don't want to leave them out either, but as they trust that and as they know that sense, they seem to follow a path that is much more enriched and much more honest and authentic. And I think that women everywhere need to really embrace that a little bit and own it, and not be shy about it, and not be afraid to talk about it, because I think the more we talk about it and the more we evolve it, the more we can share that experience and elevate everyone to a higher level, if that makes sense.
I
I
agree
get on my
completely.
soapbox sometimes, but I really think it's important. So
No, I agree with everything you're saying. Yeah. And that's really what I try to do as well, because when I first started doing this, I wrote in my bio that I was an intuitive introvert, using it as an adjective. And then one day I got up the gumption to put the comma in there and say, I'm an intuitive, an introvert, which is now using it as a noun. And for, it's two completely different things. And for me, it was a big day when I put that comma in there. And I don't know
Mhm.
if anybody noticed, but it was like a big deal, because it is difficult. It is considered woo. It is hard to claim that space. And when I really like personality theory, and I love taking personality tests, and I love seeing if they resonate with me or not. And in the traditional Myers-Briggs personality test, I am an INFJ, which is a very rare type for women to be. Only 2% of women are this personality type, apparently. And what it is an intuitive introvert. And, so intuition, introversion, thinking, judging, and then I have the T on the end. I'm turbulent. So,
That's fun.
but when I,
Got to have a little fun.
yeah, but when I looked it up, the more I looked it up, oh my God, of course, this makes perfect sense. This is talking about me. And it was pretty much validating my intuition, saying that, yes, you are this intuitive personality. You're the kind of person that likes deep discussions, that doesn't like small talk, that questions about the universe and the other worlds and the galaxies. You're always drawn to mysteries. You're always trying to research. You're always knowing there's more and seeking. And so that really validated me to the point that I could say, okay, put that comma in there.
You know what I find frustrating about that, and I relate entirely to your story, so definitely not your story, but what frustrates me about that is that when men, and again, I have no problem with the patriarchy. I have no problem with men in general. Most men are wonderful creatures. But when men are knowing in their experience, and they make a decision, they feel it, they walk with it, they lead with it, we call them good leaders. When women do it, it seems to be almost like it is a little woo, and it is a little bit, it's almost like we have to justify why we know and why we're walking that step, where it shouldn't be that way. Women have always had the sense of earth, and always had the sense of the communal experience, and always connected differently. And I think that, if there's anything I leave this earth with, and leave my daughters and my son with, it's, you all have this experience, you all have this innate knowing within you. You have to trust your experience, because that is going to guide you no matter what other people tell you. That is your internal compass that you have to hear. You have to hear it. And when you fight it, it destroys your life. But when you listen and you walk with it, it really does connect you to everything.
Yes, and that's a beautiful message to leave to your children. And I think so many women nowadays are starting to embrace it. And even in the realms where it's not normally, right? And I've had several guests on my podcast that are really championing that. And they're saying, hey, look, I'm a lawyer and I'm an accountant or I'm a CEO and I feel this way. I've had this experience. I'm owning it. It's part of my making this company successful. I'm using these abilities to come up with creative projects, to know what direction I should take my business, to know what I should do with my career, and that it doesn't have to be separate, that it can be acknowledged and integrated and celebrated. And that's really, I love that when I see that, because that was so much of what was a roadblock and a difficulty for me in the beginning. And I feel it's probably for so many women, because they feel like I did, that that's woo, and that's kind of gonna open yourself up to criticism, and it's not socially accepted, and it's often left field, and it just really is difficult to overcome all of everyone else's judgments as well as your own about what you're experiencing and what you're feeling. You really know, like you said, that knowing. So it's stepping into that and owning that, and then helping other women do the same.
What were you doing before this?
I've been in digital marketing for most all of my career. So just making websites and stuff like that. Different, of course, I'm trying to write a novel. And so I'm hoping to really develop that as another part of my career.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? What's the plot? You said it was nonfiction.
No, it's fiction.
Okay, fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about kind of your plot line?
I will be writing a nonfiction after this, because I really do want to write a book about dreams, but I'm really resisting starting that, because I feel like if I do, I'm never going to finish this other one. So
I feel like books about dreams are where I got started in understanding and being curious about my dreams, because I remember very early someone handed me a dream interpretation book, and that was my Bible for years.
Yep.
So there's nothing wrong with that, but go on.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely want to do that. So my novel is really a combination of all the things that we've been talking about that I feel drawn to and that resonate with me. So it's set around Halloween. It's a mystery. It has a main female character, and the storyline really revolves around her awakening and discovering things about herself. And there's dreams and cats and pumpkins involved, because those are my favorite things.
You have to have a familiar. Everybody does.
Yes.
That's awesome. When are you planning to hoping to have that done?
I'm hoping to have it published next Halloween. Originally, at the beginning of the year, it was going to be this Halloween, but so much has happened, and I'm grateful for it, but so much has happened that I've had to say, okay, we'll do this on the slow track, and it'll give me more time to really find my audience and have my audience find me. And so there's the universe is at work in mysterious ways.
Always.
Yes.
If you had a message that you were to leave with people who don't know you but who wanted to understand you better, to explain a little bit about your path and where you hope to go, what would it be?
Well, I would advise everyone to just start listening to their dreams. It seems like a whisper at first, because you barely remember it. It's gone in 5 minutes, and you're kind of trained or brought up to disregard it. But when you really can start to say, okay, I'm actually going to make a little bit of a commitment here, and I'm actually going to start to see what's in there for me, then you really open up a world of possibility for yourself. And I feel like that is something that everyone should be doing. I call it the ultimate women's self-care, because it really is the way to listen to your inner guidance. Listen to that little voice. That's the little voice that we sometimes just push down or ignore.
When you get those auditory channels, if you will, what do you hear?
I get a lot of song lyrics because
Nice.
yeah, because I know song lyrics really well. I know music really well. And it's kind of like this jukebox in my head that of every song I've ever heard. And so I will just randomly wake up with a song in my head or have song lyrics in the dream. And many times that line that's repeating is a message.
Do you have an example? I'm very curious now. I love music, so
Oh man, I've gotta think if I think of an example. Hmm.
I'll get a song stuck
Oh,
in my head for weeks at a time. So I understand, but I never
yeah.
think of them as messages. I'm just like, oh, earworm.
Well, and it's more for me if I wake up with it or if it's in my dream. But usually if I wake up with it, but I can't think of one right now off the top of my head. But it's usually like just one line. And sometimes that line will play over and over again as I'm waking up. And then I'll think, okay, well, sometimes if it keeps coming back, if you say, okay, what happens next? Like, what's the chorus or is this the verse or what's the next part of the song? Sometimes even that part has a message in it as well. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
I'll have to pay more attention to that. What are you
yeah,
reading right now?
so many things.
I know there's never one.
Oh, so many things. But one of the things I'm really reading, I mean, I've read it before, but I'm reading it again, and I'm kind of referring to it a lot lately. Is Women's Bodies, Women's Dreams by Patricia Garfield. It's an older book, but I love her work, and it really talks in depth about the difference between women's dreams and men's dreams, just thematically, and the way they record them and the way they remember them and the way they describe them are completely different. And then also she talks about all the changes that women's bodies go through with our hormones throughout our life and how that affects our dreams. And for example, when our estrogen is really high, our dreams are more vivid and our recall is better. And when our estrogen dips, either because of our cycle or when we go into menopause, then that affects our dream recall and dream activity. And then if you supplement with estrogen, then it raises it again. And so it's very interesting to see all the differences that you might not know actually exist. You just think that everybody kind of has the same types of dreams, but they don't.
So what is she saying? I'm very curious about men's dreams. Women are usually very free and very open about what they're dreaming. So what are you reading? Men's dreams are like their cycle of dreams, and what are you hearing from clients and things?
Well, I only work exclusively with women.
Oh, okay, so no,
So
yeah, no men.
yeah, yeah. So I don't really get I don't get those records. But I think that the content is just very different. And also women tend to have very similar type thematic dreams, like being chased or their teeth falling out or losing something or things like that. So there are some archetypes, for example, that you can trace across women's dreams that are very common. They tend to deal a lot with emotional connections and things like that, and just delve into their emotions more. And so I find it really fascinating. I think that it's also really interesting. There's a little bit of a test in there where they give you some redacted dream records, and then you have to guess whether it's a man's or a woman's. And the men's are always extremely brief. They're not detailed, and and just there's different elements that they kind of have you look for that determine whether it's one or the other. So it's quite interesting.
Hmm.
And it also makes my work easier because I really need those detailed
Right.
records.
I mean, I'm thinking over a few conversations with men over the years, and you ask for more details and they don't have them. It seems that perhaps maybe they just legitimately don't have them. Like maybe there's just
Right.
not that channel in their brain the same way that a woman does, because I feel like, again, I feel like women are connected to so many things that when we sit down to process one element of a dream or one element of the day or one element of a story, we want to give you all 87 perspectives so that you have enough information to understand exactly where my heart lies in this particular situation.
That's
And
right.
God bless all the men who have listened to me talk about my dreams and everything
That's
else, because
right.
it just is what it is. But
Right.
interesting.
And that makes it so much easier for me. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
Um, if people want to find you, what's the best way to find you online? And if they want you to do some dream analysis, what's the best way to reach you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me at womensdreamanalysis.com. And you will find there that I have dream sessions, dream journeys, which are a series of sessions. I also have events, webinars, and online courses now as well, where that you can do a self-paced audio course that will teach you all the details of the method that I talked about today, as well as techniques for dream recall, and will lead you through and give you exercises and things like that. So I highly recommend everybody check that out so you can start working it for yourself. And yeah, I'm also on Pinterest, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So.
Excellent, excellent. And we'll paste all of those links in the bio. But definitely, I am so excited that we had this opportunity to talk today. I feel like I could steal your time for another 7 or 8 hours, and we could talk more in depth about all of these things, which means you're just going to have to come back and do this again another time.
Of course.
So absolutely.
I'd be
It's
happy
been
to.
wonderful. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on today. And is there anything
you.
I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, but
We really did.
there's much more to cover.
There's so much more. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And again, we'll have you on soon. Have a
Awesome.
great
Thank you,
evening.
Wendy.
Thank you so much. Sweet dreams.